Leaders in tech are burning out at an absurd rate. Ctrl+Alt+Delete with Lisa Duerre is a no BS conversation with one of the top female executives who spent over 25 years in Silicon Valley. If you're suffering from the always-on, never good enough, will replace you today machine called the tech space, this show's for you. Here's Lisa.
Hey, everybody, it's Lisa Duerre. Welcome to Ctrl+Alt+Delete. I want to ask you a question. My question is, what percentage of meetings that you're in right now are awesome? You're energized, you feel clear on what's next, you're participating, and what percentage of those meetings just, honestly, they suck? I mean, they feel like a waste of time. You're just going through the motions, trying to get through it. Well, today you are in for a treat, because whether you are leading the meetings at the company level, whether they're board meetings, senior executive teams, or frontline, I have the most amazing guest today. I'm always inspired by her and her company and what they do. And the goal today is to give you some actionable, tangible, real-time information so that you can make sure your meetings aren't the ones that people label as being awful and non-valuable. We're going to help you bring value and energy today, right now, into your meetings. So it's my honor to have Elise Keith here today. Elise, welcome to Ctrl+Alt+Delete.
Oh, Lisa, it's so great to finally connect this way. How fun. I'm so glad you're doing a podcast. It's wonderful.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. So Elise and I go way back a couple of years. We've run in different circles, but we keep meeting at these professional development, up-leveling our business meetings. And I'm always intrigued by her, and I always seek her out. And then I ended up moving to Oregon, and now we're neighbors, but we haven't been able to see each other because of the situation with COVID-19.
But once it ends, there's going to be, there's going to be some celebration happening.
I think it's a champagne moment and beyond. Yeah, because we have so much here to talk to you guys today. So let me give you a little bit of background about Elise and why I asked her to be here. So she is the founder and CEO of Lucid Meetings. She's an author of Where the Action Is, the Meetings That Make or Break Your Organization. I'm just going to pause and say that again. This is the book titled Where the Action Is, the Meetings That Make or Break Your Organization. So I think everybody, whether you're jogging, driving, listening as you're, trying to have 10 minutes by yourself, wherever you can find it, whether it's in the closet or the garage or taking a walk, like lean into this one, right? She's a regular contributor to Inc. and other publications as well. And her company, Lucid Meetings, helps thousands of teams worldwide run successful meetings every day. And in 2020, this is a celebration I want to have in person. Lucid Meetings was recognized as one of the top 10 global influencer brands on the topic of remote work and virtual meetings. So I have the most amazing person to talk to today, and I'm thrilled you're here, Elise. Let's just jump right in. Sound good?
Awesome. Bring it.
Yeah. So tell me, we were talking a little bit earlier, what data, stats, insight do you have that supports the methodology and the mission that you're on? Like, what's the reality of what's going on in meetings today?
Oh, it's where the action is. So what's going on in meetings is there's so much going on there, and it's so complex and it's so impactful to how we run our businesses. But just a couple of really top line data points, right? As you move up the executive chain, it's more and more likely you'll spend a higher percentage of your day in meetings. Obviously, right? That's where you set direction. It's where you make the decisions. It's where you have the strongest opportunity to influence your team, your company, your business, your analysts, all of those people at scale. So that's where you're going to be spending your time. And it's not unrealistic to say that a huge part of what a leader's job is meetings. That's how you do your work. And yet, while that can be 60 to 80% of how you spend your day, we know that fewer than 20% of managers or leaders have had any training whatsoever on this particular skill. Now, most of them may have heard that, hey, you should have an agenda. Hey, you should start and stop on time. Some pithy little bullet points that make a nice ink article, but they don't actually make for effective leadership strategy, right? If that was all there was to it, wouldn't this all be a solved problem, right? And it clearly isn't. So one of the other data points that we have is that when you survey people about their satisfaction in meetings, And you say, okay, well, was that meeting you were just in great, or was it a waste of your time, or somewhere in between? You can always see a very, very strong difference in the replies. And there is one person in the room who always thinks the meeting went just fine. Do you know who that is?
May I guess? Let's
You
play.
please do.
Let's play
Please do.
special bucks and see if I win a Starbucks card. My guess is it's the leader. They think it's awesome.
They think it's awesome. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not because they're all egotistical or anything like narcissistic. It's just a fundamental blind spot, because the keys to meeting satisfaction are that you know what to expect from that call, from that meeting, right? You know what it's about and what you're meant to get out of it. And then at the end, you got what you expected out of it, and then you had a chance to participate.
Yes.
And leaders always have those things. So put that together, and then put us into a post-COVID world where we have leaders who are meeting to get their job done, have lost the ability to get information from their teams in any other way because they have no system set up. Don't have any training in how to run effective meetings, especially in an online context. And you see a huge ramp in actual meeting time happening across corporate America and actually internationally. So people who were meeting a lot before are now only meeting, and the fatigue, the burnout, the extreme exhaustion is really setting in.
I have to, well, first I'm giggling at that I got it right. Yay me, right? Because I've been that leader. I've been the leader. I've been the one going, that meeting was awesome. And they're like, well, it was great listening to you talk for an hour, but what's the point of us being here? I've had those moments, right? So especially like project status updates, or when there's people in the room that are more senior than me, like let's say, I'm having a meeting with the C-suite when I was, a senior director, and all I want to do is impress up and not include down, because it was very important that we got the message out right. And what I learned over time was, wait a minute, that's a waste of your team's time. If you're going to go in, great, but don't bring your team. Or send one of your team members and let them have a moment where they really stand out and build their brand. But it's not about just impressing up. It's about really bringing the right things at the right time in the right ways. And you said something that I really wanted to double click on. And you were talking about what to know and expect. You said 3 things: what to know and expect. You said participate. And there was something I didn't get to write down fast enough. So I want to make sure we have all 3 for our listeners.
Oh, getting what you expected.
Getting what you expect. Right.
Yeah,
so there's one thing to anticipate, and then there's another thing for it not to be met or have it be met. Okay. So know what to expect, get what you expect, and the freedom to participate. And I want to say, one of the things I'm seeing over and over, especially in tech right now, is the lack of participation, right? There's so many introverts in tech. These people are brilliant and they want their beautiful, amazing ideas and knowledge to actually be fully thought through before it ever comes out of their mouth. And then you compound that with, you can't really read the room and people are talking over. There is so much here around making this a psychologically safe place and building in your own methods and processes to invite and receive what people are talking about. Even last week, I was talking about how a team member of mine, I asked for feedback in the meeting, like, what do you guys think? And the person said, well, there's some holes in this. And I just shut down. This was early in my career. I shut down for a minute and I looked back up and I said, I don't think I'm open to feedback right now. I'd like to circle back because I can feel something's going on for me. And after this happened, Elise, I took a walk, she took a walk, and the whole team left. But half of them came to me like, oh, how disrespectful. She gave you feedback, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't disrespectful. That was courageous. I asked, right? And then people went to her, how can we protect you from Lisa? Don't you think that was a career limiting move? And she said, no, she asked. And I trust that she wanted it. So we had this amazing opportunity to reset the culture of our meetings in that moment. I don't think that's true for a lot of people because, well, therapy and, growing up, I know to check myself when I'm triggered, but that doesn't mean we all do. So knowing what to expect, knowing, or getting what you expect, and the freedom and the invitation to participate. Like, what else can we say about this right now for anyone listening? Because I gotta believe with the fatigue and the kids running in and out, or the elder parents texting my phone, so-and-so's phone's not working. There's so much coming at leaders right now. What tips and actionable ideas can we give them right now to make sure those three things can happen?
So, we help teams do this all the time. And the challenge that you face when you're an independent leader trying to solve that problem by yourself. There are a couple of challenges. One of them is that meetings are not an individual event, right? They're a team sport. So,
Yep.
you have to move not only yourself, but your entire group into the mindset of creators, not consumers, right? This is not the sort of thing where we sit back and we evaluate whether this meeting is going okay for me, and then we rate it. We give it a thumbs up and a thumbs down, and we're going to go binge watch something else in meeting land. It's not a Netflix show.
Yeah. Boy, I can see all the thumbs down in the Netflix land on rating meetings, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So it's absolutely an engaged team activity. So the expectation around how to play, how to engage, and that you will in fact play needs to be set across the board. But it doesn't work to just say, okay, everybody, you're supposed to participate now. I need you to engage, right?
Right.
Because remember, nobody's been trained. And asking the right question is actually kind of tricky, right? Like, does anybody have any feedback? Well,
exactly. I realized I asked the wrong question.
That's a heck of a question, right?
Right. Yeah. What do you guys think? I wanted to, this is awesome, and high five and move on. And what do you guys think? And by the way, I'm trying not to say you guys anymore. I'm trying to be in the new world, right? And really manage my language, which is about inclusion, right? And making sure people feel safe to speak. So even today, it's challenging, right? Because we're programmed. So yeah, what do you guys think? Or what are your thoughts? That's like so nebulous. Like, that's not even useful.
Right. Open discussion is a great opportunity to open up a chasm into which nothing falls, right?
Yeah.
So the techniques to actually get that engagement, to get that participation, take some time. They take some practice. If you think of meetings as a team sport, well, what are the rules of the game? Right? Like, what are the positions? What does it mean to be on the field at this time in this what's the goal, right? And I think that's the simplest actionable tip. So whenever folks go through my programs, one of the things we start with is we're getting really, really clear on the purpose of every meeting. So that's the why. And you state it as a verb, right? That's the doing part. Because if you're meeting, you're in there to do some amount of work. So we're deciding, we're updating our plan. Don't ever meet just to tell each other what's going on. That's deadly. You're doing something with it. You're answering a question, something. So the purpose is a verb, and then your intended outcomes are nouns. Those are when we get this, we've scored the goal, we can go home. Woo, victory. Planning meeting, we got a plan. Podcast, we've got a podcast recording that makes us both feel good about how we're showing up in the world, right?
Right.
So those two things, and if you start with those two things, half the time we find that the teams that just laser in on that and ditch agendas entirely.
Say that again. Say that again.
To begin with, just to begin with, get really, really clear on your purpose. Get really, really clear on what you intend to create. Have a plan in your mind about how you might do that, but don't worry about an agenda. Just go in and do it. Get the job done first.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And tell everybody, this is the job we're doing. Let's all get in, get it done, and we'll be out. And how do we make sure we did it? Well, we write it down. We write it down.
Oh my gosh. It's like
and that it's a simple thing, and everybody's like, well, yeah, duh. But how many people do it? Yeah. So I got another little data pit. So the researchers, we do a lot of work with the academic and research community, and they recently pulled data from calendars, thousands of calendars. to look at all of the meeting invitations. And they found that of all the thousands of calendar meetings they looked at in business, fewer than 8% had a recognizable purpose or agenda.
In the title.
In the invitation, in the calendar period.
Wow.
Anywhere in the title, in the body, in the whole thing. They all had time, they had a name, and usually the names are lousy, like project team meeting. That tells you who's going, but not why. Right? Like, you know, family meeting.
Oh, I'm taking this all in. Yeah.
Like what, like for why? So fewer than 8%. So you think you're doing it, but you're not. There's a good chance it's not happening. And that little thing by itself can be a real game changer.
I have so much going on in my brain. If anyone's watching me, my eyeballs are pinging. I'm taking massive notes, right? Because what I want to say is this 8%. 8%. Think about how you as a leader in your organization can move the needle. Think about what it would mean to be more effective and efficient. You're already exhausted. And this small game changer tip on making sure that the invitation, the calendar, whether it's an invitation like you're welcome to join us or you better be there, I don't care. What is the why? What's the purpose? What's the intended outcome? And then being clear on how you guys are going to play. Like you said, it's a team sport. Like I even think about golf because a lot of, people in sales that I work with are in golf and they have a caddy. You're never just golfing by yourself. You have someone, right? And I'm sure when you get to that hole, there's a quick conversation. How are we going to achieve this objective and how we're going to do that? So I think of that as a meeting, right? I mean, regardless of whether it's 25 people on a project team or one in a one-on-one where you're talking about the next steps for whatever project, 8% of people are giving this data right now of leaders. And the thing that I want to, as I'm processing out loud, which is what I do, the thing I really think that's important, my heart wants to say out loud is imagine if 15% did. And then that turned into the ripple effect of 20. And, this doesn't mean everybody has to do it once, but if you even move the needle a little, imagine the amazing outcomes. So I know you have a couple of programs you do here. So I know you can speak to this more than me, but I'm so inspired that something this simple that gets missed all the time because we're busy, right? It's what you focus on improves. If you want better team performance, if you want higher team collaboration, you want more clarity on what's important, do what Elise says. Put your damn purpose as a verb and make sure your intended outcomes are nouns.
Well, it sounds really, really simple, right? I think what a lot of leaders find is when they try to do it in practice, because everybody's running a million miles an hour.
Yep.
You sit down to do it and you're like, okay, I want to get really, really crystal clear on these two things. It's actually hard. It's hard when you start because we're so used to discuss the project.
Yeah.
Well, discuss is, for anybody who's activity versus results, that's an activity. An activity to what purpose? Right? I'm working out today. Is that to what purpose? So that you can win the marathon or so you can look good in a bikini, right? Like these
I love it. Yep.
These are very important distinctions because otherwise you're running in circles.
Yeah. Yeah.
without necessarily any progress towards your goal. And story-wise, what we are starting to hear from people is the burnout at leadership levels, for sure. We had a call the other day with a larger company where they hadn't put any focus on this because they hadn't had to, right? They hadn't put any process or operational discipline in place because, times are good and you're fat and happy and things happen and the money comes and hooray. But that's not working in every sector anymore.
Yeah.
And they have no skills. And they said, well, what do we need to do? And they came into the room and they were all talking about it. And they realized they had to fix their meetings because they are in back to back to back to back meetings where they think they've made decisions, right? Where they think they're making progress and they come back later and nothing's changed. And one director said, she goes, I've been on this program. I know it's important. We are now nearly 4 years into this program and we meet once a month. And every time we meet, we all say, yes, we really care, but we have no time to get anything done on this. And she just broke down crying
Mm.
And when you have people in your calls who are crying, because it's not because they, oh, I don't like meetings. It's because they can't
Mhm.
achieve what they're there on earth to do, what you're paying them to do. And it
Yeah.
just sucks your sense of self-worth and
Mm.
your, sense of value. And it's enervating. So, that kind of situation is growing, and it's an unacceptable
Mm. Yeah.
way to operate.
I just remembered a meeting I cried in when you said that.
Did you feel
I
like,
oh yeah, I could feel it all. Like my chest is probably really red if you're watching the video. There's nothing worse than being hired to do a job you're excited to do
Mhm.
and then not being able to execute on it because you are just stuck in this like vortex of ambiguity. I mean, you think about it right now, we're in a VUCA world, right?
Right.
Volatility,
Mhm.
uncertainty. Let me do my VUCA. Chaos and ambiguity. That's
Right.
life. So of course you're going to cry, but as the leader, your job, and you said this earlier, your job as a leader, excuse me, you steer the ship, you set the tone, you're in the meetings, you run your business through other people in meetings. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, if you got people crying, your leads really pay attention, right? If you feel like crying, pay attention, right?
Right.
Because those are signs of burnout. And I know that meetings run poorly absolutely contribute to burnout. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, rebooted. Heck, this podcast is Ctrl+Alt+Delete, right? So
Yeah.
it's about rebooting. One of the pull-throughs I'm seeing here when we're talking is I'm realizing, the program that I teach is called the Impact Playbook for Leaders in Tech, and it's all about communication and influence. And honestly, that happens in every meeting. So some of the things you're saying, I'm nodding like this if you're watching. This is true with every agreement or decision you make. You better know your intended outcome, have your backup plan if you don't get what you ask for, figure out how you're going to close the loop so that you have agreement. And that's in writing, right? And we teach this too. So I really would love to learn from you on some of the tips and tricks you have there to just give leaders actionable things right now. So what I tell people is, even if you make a voice memo for later, capture it,
Mhm.
not record the
Mhm.
other person, but be like, hey, I just talked to Elise and we agreed to this, so that you can
Right.
put it in writing because you go to your next meeting. I also encourage people to block 10 minutes at the end of the day, because you can't remember it all, to just write down what you agreed to, right? Check your notes and see what you missed. And I also say things like, go check in with that person, circle back and see if you missed anything. The other
Mhm.
thing that I recommend to people as well, and I do this with my clients now, I used to do 60-minute coaching sessions, right? They're back to back. They're not prepped for the meeting, so we don't get the most out of their time. And then they're
Right.
running right to the next thing, so there's no time for application. So many times now I block 75 minutes, but they block 90.
Right.
And so
Right.
they
Right. Right.
can, and I send them a form right before every session. What's on your mind? What are we celebrating? What are you stuck with? What's your goal for our meeting? So I'm making them think about it, even if
Right.
they don't write me back. And then after, what are you going to do about it? What did you learn? And what did you forget to tell me or not have a chance to, right? So I have like the bookend process for the coaching clients. And I talk about this in the program. So those are like some of the things I've been learning just from being a leader. But I know you have so much more data and you have operations and systems and experience here. What can people do right now with the fact that it feels like there's no time and everything's back to back? Like, how do you step in there and take back your calendar? What are your
So
thoughts?
yeah, so your practice sounds completely and totally in line with the kind of advice people that we give people, only we
Mhm.
we shift it just a little bit. So let's say you've got your purpose and your intended outcomes clear. Step
Mhm.
one, right? No point in meeting if you can't do those things. Um, so that's one. That'll save you some time right there, because the minute you go and look at your
Mhm.
calendar and you can't figure it out, you cancel that meeting until you can,
Right?
because
Yeah.
you don't have budget authority to invest in a whole team's time sitting around for no particular reason. So,
I'm
I
writing the
mean,
timestamp down.
maybe you do, but
No, no,
you
you
should,
don't. Yeah. Being
consider that.
responsible steward of the budget and people's time, right? Because time is
Absolutely,
money.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
amazing the budget authority we give to, junior program managers. Is
amen.
like,
Oh,
oh yeah, I'm going to pull 70 people in for an update. Like, really? You're
oh,
going to spend $10,000 on that? Really?
oh, I love
So
this. Yes. Okay.
so you get those. Otherwise, it doesn't go on the calendar, and that'll free you up right away. But the biggest time savings that happens in meetings comes from two places, and it's bookends within the meeting itself. So
Okay.
one is when you walk in the door, you clarify and reiterate that purpose. Hey, everybody, we are here today to do X. Now, this is my goal, and here's what I want to have happen, but I want to hear from all of you. Is there anything else we need to accomplish? Right? Capture those goals. So some amount of getting really clear about why you're there and what you're trying to do, but also getting everybody else speaking within the first 5 minutes.
Got it.
And you have to do that because one of the ways to make your meeting go faster is to get everybody moving the ball together. And if they're still checking their email on their phone, if they're walking in late, if they're still thinking about the project or the next meeting or the last meeting or whatever it is that's going on in their head and their mind is not in that meeting, you can't have a meeting of the minds. So you have to get them engaged right away. So that's key. So clarity of purpose, get everybody engaged. Then through that middle, they know why they're there. They know they're in the game. Then you play through to the end and you leave at least 5 minutes at the end to do that check-in. So, okay, we said we were going to do this. Let's make sure we did it. What are the decisions we've made? Let's write them down, look at them together in writing. So if you don't have a note-taking tool of some kind for your meetings, you need to get one. Anything, anything, start with anything. But make sure people can see this is the decision we made. We will do a Black Friday sale for 30% off all courses, correct? And it will go from this date to this date, correct? Right? And when people look at that, they're like, wait a second. Didn't we say 20%? That's awfully generous. I'm like, no, really. And so you get to actually make sure the decisions are real before you leave the room. Same thing with action items. So those are written down. Hey, Lisa, you said this would be ready in 24 hours. Well, now that I'm looking at it, it is Thanksgiving. Maybe I meant 2 weeks. Great. If you're going to make a promise to me, because that's what those things are, right? We are making promises to each other. And, beyond the fact that we're trying to run more productive meetings, we're also trying to trust one another. We're to feel good about working with the people we're with. And part of how you do that is you keep your promises. And you can't keep your promises if you can't remember them. So making sure that the promises are written down and that each person, you go around the room and you say, Lisa, you signed up for this. Is that date realistic? Will you remember what that is later? Does that look good to you? And you can really, truly commit. Those things, when you leave, solve that problem that our manager was talking about, where they have the meeting over and over again and they circle the drain, right?
Yeah, I just had an epiphany, and I just want to say it because maybe the people listening can benefit from this too. So when you said leave 5 minutes for check-in, I'm going to just give you the truth that came through my brain. Well, yeah, meetings always run over. There's no 5 minutes, blah, blah, blah. Like I got very oh, that's not possible in my head, right? And then I realized when I coach the executives, I just talked about it. I leave that time, right? So how many of us, including me, that just had that real moment of there's no time for those 5 minutes, if you go back to your concept about the budget and what's your budget authority, you better make the time. So figuring out, I'm thinking, get a timekeeper, tell the team, let's figure out together, how are we going to do this? And then I had another flash that this is what happens in my brain. I heard Brene Brown talk one time about her team meetings and how she didn't have enough time for a topic. And she said out loud, yeah, we'll deal with that next week. But the person who was so invested to make sure that it was done was deflated and had the courage, just like my example in my own world, and said, the story I'm telling myself by you moving that is that it's not important. And she said it was a huge learning that it's so important I'm moving it to the next meeting. And so what I'm hearing you talk about, clarify, invite people in, reiterate why we're here, have the check-in. If you're running out of time, in her example, or in my own belief, there isn't enough time, what's something that leaders can learn from us in this conversation right now? Obviously a timekeeper, that was what came to me. I mean, I could even set my own time on my phone and just say, I'm going to be accountable to you. how do you help people find that 5 minutes if they have the mindset that I started with, which is like, oh yeah, I'll just do that in email. I'll do that later.
Yeah, the reality is that when you start, okay, so I think I mentioned before, I run a program with teams to help them design their way of meeting, right?
Yes. Yep.
And the thing is, when the meetings you run are clear, everybody's engaged, and you're writing down what you've achieved when you achieve it, because you know what you're trying to achieve. And then you're posting that where everybody has access to it, so that should people not be in the meeting, they can still benefit from all that value. You end up eliminating a lot of time wasted in unproductive meetings. So that's how you get that time back.
You get your time back by
right?
designing a better flow and doing it consistently.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, so I just finished a couple cohorts going through this program, and you know, the results are not understood identically by everybody, but they're clear, right? So that's another thing that's really sort of fascinating to look at as you run through that kind of process, right? Because one of the things that seems like it should be quantitative, you know, time spent in meetings, right? It's like it's 60 minutes or it's 45 minutes, right? You can count that stuff, you can add it, you can subtract it, you can do it on a spreadsheet, right? It's numbers, right? But that's not actually our human experience of time. Our human experience of time is very qualitative. You know,
wow. Yeah.
I have no time. I am overwhelmed. I'm rushed. I'm bored. This is going on forever. You know, those are the experiences of time. So we do a post-program survey, and I just have to read the results from this one that came in because it's fascinating, right?
Yes.
So
Do.
One of the questions we ask at the end is, so how much time have you? How much less time are you spending in meetings now? How much time is this saved? And of this group of 8, in this particular set of replies, the first person said 40%. You're just like, whoa, that's
40%.
That's fabulous, right? The next person said 30 minutes to an hour a week. Another person said 15 minutes a meeting. Another said countless hours. And then another person said none. Now, in terms of me doing an ROI calculation later for a nice case study,
exactly.
the math, I'm going to work with the person who's in charge and has budget authority to use their math. But you can see from those examples that like, it's not that they're in different meetings and they have different math to work from. Those are all people who meet together all the time, and their perception is radically different. You know, so finding the time, this is not a math problem. This is a commitment problem.
Yeah, I was going to say priority and commitment. Those are the 2 words that showed up. Yeah, mic drop. This is not a math problem. We all have 24 hours in a day. What's your commitment? Where are you spending it? And what are the priorities, right? I mean, I think about this right now with kids doing distance learning. Obviously, I talk about my daughter a lot in my podcast. She'll be 9 this week. She'll be 9. So what we'll talk
Mine
about
will be
is
9 in March.
Get out. See, there's another reason, right? Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so I watch her on Zoom, and I've talked to the teachers about this, right? And hats off to teachers. Like I mean, I'm a corporate trainer, I'm speaker, author, all this stuff, right? You and I have all this in common. And I look at this 3rd grade teacher who's trying to engage and have commitment. Okay, it's math time. We're going to work on math. Everybody, it all applies. And I watch my daughter sometimes turn the camera off and sit there and doodle. And I think to myself, how many leaders in tech are sitting there doodling? Because I've seen it real time in meetings. I've seen people have their computers open and like, I'm phoning it in with you in the room because something else is more important. And it just reminds me about what you just said. It's about commitment. And then I added the word priorities because it's not a time, right? So what thoughts or tools, where I'm going with all this, if I can just because so for the introverts in the room, I know you would never talk this way. any of you listening, you would be very purposeful with your question. I have to spit it out and then it all comes together magically. So if you still think I have value add, it might encourage you to say, here's what I'm thinking right now, instead of just trying to wait to be perfect and being the last to talk. That's what I always tell my introverts. The question that's coming to mind is to find the courage to tell the teacher for my daughter, right, which I helped her talk about how it can be more engaging, or the, you know, senior leadership team telling the C-suite, this meeting, this all hands meeting is a waste of time, whatever. What tips and tools, ideas do you have to help people step into their voice and own and be courageous enough to say, hey, I think this meeting could be done better, or I don't really think I need to be in this meeting and here's why. I mean, I know so many people that just say yes because they want the visibility, but then they show up not there and it's really hurting their brand. It's not helping. And it's wasting time. So let's talk about that for a minute. Just what are your thoughts and what do you know? And I know there's some wonderful nuggets in there, helping people find their courage.
The influencing up part and finding your courage thing, it's challenging for sure, right? Which is, you know, one of the reasons, and in some environments it's not, it is beyond challenging because of the thing we started off with, right? That leadership blind spot.
Yep.
You know, I will often have people come and engage me and they're like, well, we're fine, but we would like you to train all those project managers. Or you'd like to help all those people run better meetings, you know, and those are the groups that have, you know, the weakest results, because it turns out things roll downhill, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
You say that so politely. I'd be like, shit rolls downhill, people fix this.
Yeah, but it does. But you know, the way that you show up in meetings is very much a reflection of the values and the intended culture. Right. So either you can design those things with intent, or you let them emerge and it becomes the shadow system, right? In the complex adaptive system kind of thing we talk about, like the how things really work is we show up and Lisa talks at us for an hour, or you know, we show up and Elise dominates, you know, that kind of a thing, right? That's your actual culture. That's your actual, those are your real values coming to play, that you didn't care enough to take the time to design something that's hospitable, productive, and hosted for your team to do their work in. But if you are in an environment like that, I think it's important not to assume that your leaders are doing it out of spite, out of egotism, out of narcissism, because the other thing we started with is that they actually don't have exposure to anything else. You know, most people learn to meet by going to meetings, which were bad. You know, and by the time they get in charge, those meetings feel better to them, so they think they've improved on what they had as they were in as an employee. They haven't, but they think they have. So that's you know, how do you learn to do something you've never seen done, right? And if you think you're busy and time wasting meetings, just imagine 80% of your day is spent that way, right? So influencing upwise, the things that we've found to be most helpful for folks are storytelling, always, right? So we do a lot of storytelling about how folks like Brene Brown. She's got a whole bunch of very specific meeting techniques she's developed for her team to help emphasize their values. Amazon, you know, so in the tech world, Amazon, Intel have very strong meeting practices, and they are trained. So Andy Grove, who was one of the original CEOs of Intel, you know, the author of High Output Management, he used to teach the effective meeting training course to all new hires for decades. Right. So that was how important he understood that to be. And when you go into the really high performing groups, you will see that they have designed this and they train it. So you can tell those stories, right? You can tell the stories of how this is not a problem for these guys. Oh, by the way, these guys are eating our market for breakfast. Maybe we should take some time to learn some of those techniques.
Oh, I love that so much, because then it's not about you. Like, one of the things I always teach about influence is it has to be about the decision maker to be able to change and what matters to them. So when you say those guys are eating our breakfast, that's a brilliant strategy to get people to pay attention, because it's not, I'm burning out and I'm overwhelmed, these meetings suck. It's like, hey, I think we can be better, and here's an idea I have. I love this so much. This is so good, because decision makers say no. If there's too much risk, too much change, there's nothing in it for them. They feel like it's just about you. I mean, I have 10 of these I talk about all the time, but I love what you just said so much. I wonder even if they had your book, and they might just leave it on their desk and say, hey, in chapter 2, or an ink article.
Everybody should have that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing we actually have on our website that's a resource that we put together, both for leaders and for people trying to influence up, is an ROI worksheet, because there are four ways in which you can calculate financial impact to your organization for your meetings. And the obvious one is time, right? Like, hey, if we had shorter meetings, we have this much salary time returned, or if we had fewer people in our meetings, that's easy. But the more interesting ones are things like decision velocity and quality. So you make better decisions faster, you win, right? The guy standing
talk about in tech.
Right? The guy standing on the field just dribbling the ball back and forth, they ain't going to make any goals. So decision velocity and quality, huge impact, and lots of great research on employee engagement and retention. So especially in tech, if you're having any trouble keeping good talent or attracting great talent, this is a big place to put some emphasis. It makes a huge difference. And then the final one is sales, right? So 62% of initial sales calls don't go to a second meeting.
Oh, I know this so well.
Right?
We talk about I coach a lot in sales. So I work most of the time, my clients are sales and engineering, the engineering support, customer support, is the AEs, the sales
account execs, all those people.
All of them. And how many times we think about the sales leader who goes into a meeting, just like what we're talking about, internal meetings. And then you get the results back from the customer, and they're like, they didn't even listen. They don't even care they're just on a mission to close the deal, right? And
right, exactly.
They don't know my pain points. They don't even ask me for input, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
All the time. The time.
Totally irresponsible use of that resource, and a completely lost opportunity, because every one of those people represents your brand. It's not, Ted, the obnoxious sales guy. It's your company, the obnoxious company, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And, absolutely. So, sales impact, revenue generation, employee engagement and retention, decision quality and velocity, and then just basic productivity, right? And most people lead with productivity, which is the least compelling, I think, of those to hit on.
Yeah, I want to, you're a little bit fuzzy now, and I want to make sure I get your face. So come closer, a little bit closer to your camera. Oh, yeah, you're still, that's better. Okay. Because this is critical, and I want them to hear you. Okay. First of all, I almost want to say, don't worry about time right now. Go, if you're, okay. People in tech, I have to say this, I'm on my soapbox. Every time you complain about how you didn't get the tape out fast enough, or the new software release fast enough, or, your competition's kicking your ass, pay attention to this. Every time you're losing talent, or people aren't checking in and you're getting more medical leaves from stress and burnout, pay attention to this. Every time your sales numbers are at risk, or you feel like we lost that important deal, pay attention to this, right? This is way more than time and productivity. This is the channel. This is the foundation for you to grow your business and your performance and build your teams. Right? If you want to leave a legacy as a leader, pay attention here. This is the pull through. And I don't care if you're in tech or not. I don't care if you're a nonprofit board trying to take care of, hospice, right? Think about what it means for those nurses who are in there doing hospice. If you are, I'm trying to think of like the random teachers, anybody right now thinking about making decisions, moving quickly, quality decisions, engagement of the team, and your sales numbers. This is what business cares about. And if they don't, there's a bigger problem, right? So I just had to soapbox it for a minute, Elise. I thank you for that. And you have a tool that everyone can get to on your website.
Yeah, we do.
Right? I love this.
Yep.
Okay. We could talk for
Yeah,
7 days. This
right.
is so good.
It's hard, right? Because it's huge, and people think, oh yeah, well, meetings. Yeah, meetings are
Well,
lousy.
yeah,
Meetings are lousy everywhere. What are you going to do? That's the way it is. Well, the key is they aren't.
yeah, because
They
what I'm hearing you say and what I
they
think
aren't
is just
lousy everywhere. Some people
there.
have nailed it.
Yeah, and you help them. And even what I want to, I'm
Hmm.
like shouting at the rooftops. I get like this, so hang with me. Um, I don't even think it's about meetings. I think what we're talking about is leadership.
Yeah.
We're talking about culture. We're talking about process and systems. We're
Hmm.
talking about leadership, values. Like we're talking about heads and hearts at speed and scale. Like this is why I wanted to talk to you, because
Yeah.
you want to talk about a secret sauce that doesn't need to be secret. The more explicit that this can be and the more consistent. This is the same with parenting, by the way, people, right? My daughter thrives when she's got rules and knows what's up. I put her in a class next week. She's freaked out about it. It could be a meeting. She's like, who's going to be in there? I don't know what's up. Why am I there? What's the purpose? And I had to say, you're
Hmm.
going there because, we want you to try new things, and you get to try it once. But I didn't set her up for success, and I know better. I was busy, signed her up. It was a great idea to me. How many leaders do this, right? So,
Right.
oh, Elise, I'm so grateful for this. And I think what I want to do now is so that people can really get a sense of who you are and why are you on this mission? What caused you to found Lucid, and what's the big picture for what you guys are doing and how you're helping your clients?
Yeah. So my background, I came out of tech actually. And Lucid was in fact founded as a tech company. So we have a software platform that helps people scale effective meeting habits. Once they have effective meeting habits and that they're ready to scale, don't expect software is going to solve your problem if you don't have skills.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, I came to this work because at the time when I started in tech, I was serving international standards organizations. And these are the companies or the groups that like do things like, how does the USB plug going to work? Or how does the
Mm-hmm.
HTML standard work? And that involves representatives, technical representatives from multiple countries. So lots of introverts
Mm-hmm.
who don't necessarily speak the same language
Yep.
coming together, and they have competing agendas. By definition, they're literally competitors in the room, making decisions about how the tech works that will then run our economy, right? Big deal, high stakes stuff.
Very big deal. Mm-hmm.
And they did it. And they're able to come together in those rooms and make those decisions and get them ratified and get them out there, right? And I would go back to my office with my co-located team. We're all on the same team. We all have the same objective, and we couldn't get jack done because like we were fighting over, which hex code color to use for the logo and
Yep. Mm-hmm.
exactly how to partition this thing or that thing. And we were stuck. And I was like, well, how is it that they're being able to be successful and we aren't, right? How can they make decisions when they don't even speak the same language and we can't? And we started to do some work with a coach, and that was really illuminating. We learned about our personality types and our profiles and our preferences
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. And mostly what I learned from that was that I was meant to adapt to everybody else. And then as
Yeah.
somebody new would come in, we'd have to figure out how they fit, and there would,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, well, they're not doing that at the international standards level. You don't like say, well, here's my disc profile, let me join the
Right.
committee, right?
Yep.
You don't do
Yep.
that. So what was the difference? Well, the difference was that they had gotten very clear about how you meet effectively.
Mm-hmm.
Here's who can participate. Here's how we make decisions. Here's what needs to be done before we can do it. Here's the percentage that has to happen before we can pass. Here's how we approve it. Da, 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 da. And I watched ASTM. So normally it's a super long process to do a standard 2 years. I watched ASTM double down on getting their meetings right. And they were able to take that process, international groups of competitors coming together to change how the world works, down to 6 months.
From 2 years to 6 months?
Yes.
Wow.
It was off the charts. And that's meeting design. That's
Mm-hmm.
designing the way you work. And we're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I love all the other stuff about teamwork and,
Mhm.
emotional intelligence, and all of these things are super important. But oh my gosh, what happens if you just tell people how to work well together
Mhm.
and you make that easy so that they can stop having to focus on all of that and they can focus on the content. They can focus on the work because the rest of it is clear. Game changer.
Yeah.
So then we started to do the research and we're like, okay, well, that's committee meetings at standards orgs are still boring. I mean, they're not fun, right? So how are people doing it that's fun? How are people that are doing it when they care about diversity and inclusion? How do they do it when they care about vulnerability? How do they do it when
Mhm.
they care about decision velocity? That's Amazon's thing, right? So, what are the different patterns? And from there, we've conducted and assembled a body of research and tools and techniques and products around that.
So you had this experience and went, there's the magic that I light up about, that lights you up, and you just jumped in and formed and founded your company. Is that how your
Yeah,
time in tech?
pretty much. I mean, just, when you find something where everybody's trying to solve the same problem, which is how do we
Mhm.
help teams work together well?
Mhm.
And you find something that like you can lay out a set of steps that other people can follow, and you don't
Yep.
need your PhD and, behavioral psychology to understand them,
Mhm.
right? And you can be
Yeah.
junior or you can be senior and you can still relate to it. Like
Mhm.
that's powerful.
Yeah,
That's kind of exciting.
that's very exciting, and I think that's one of the reasons why when I met you, I mean, I don't know if you remember this, but like I'd run up to you on breaks and go, "I have an idea. Someone you should talk
Yeah.
to." Like I was always like the cheerleader, and I'm sure people in the room were like, "How do you know?" I'm like, "I didn't know her. I believe in what she does." I could tell the minute Elise shared what she did, I was all over it, and I've stayed in touch for years. It's been like 3 years, right? And one of the things I know when I work with my clients and in the programs that I run, what you're talking about is foundational, right? And so when you do your disc profile, or I don't even do most of those assessments. I usually do, for me, I do the 360s live because I want to talk and
Mhm.
have a conversation and better understand. And then I usually leverage the Gallup strengths assessment because I
Uh-huh.
find that when you're working on teams, understanding your natural strength gets you to faster results too. Because if you're in your genius zone and your natural state, you can be more productive, more engaged and less burnt out, right? So I love what you're saying
Super
so
wonderful
much.
personal professional development.
Yeah, right?
Not the same
Exactly.
thing as what you do to enable teams of people who might be changing all the time.
Absolutely. This is
Yeah.
exactly what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I learned on my own journey was, as an extroverted thinker, I got to manage that. Like, it's my podcast, so I'm going to be me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's a
Hmm.
lot of freedom in that. And yet, if I'm presenting to a customer or working with a client, I really button that up because it doesn't really serve the person on the other side. And so I think about the work that you do, and I believe that what you're doing is you're being of massive service. Like, meetings can be a place of service. They can actually help the business and the people. And isn't that why leaders form companies, right? I know why I formed mine, to be of service and to help people, right? I want to
Yeah.
make money at it. And so I'm very grateful for what you're saying here. And I know we're definitely closing in on time. And there's one story that you had briefly said to me that I think it might really be the way to end this, in a very purposeful way. And you had shared you had some insight about burning out your own people. This story, right? And I'm thinking that if there's anything, any nugget or, I don't know, aha moment that can help the leaders that are like, I know I need to do this, I want to do this, but is it really affecting my people? Even though you've given them the data, and even though we've talked about this, having been in your own world doing this, what could you share with the listeners right now to help them really digest and take this for what it's worth, which is gold, by the way, which matches your
You
background.
right? Isn't
Yeah.
that fun?
Yep.
Shiny.
Shiny and gold.
Actually, I think on that front, maybe one of the stories from one of the clients I just finished working with is a little bit better
Great. Let's do it.
because they came in and the person I was working with was the COO. We often work with, CEO, COO, or director of people and cultures, often the vector.
Yep.
And COOs tend not to be quite as overburdened as many of the other folks in the company. And he brought his team in, and after the beginning of the first workshop, I have them do this exercise where they list out all of the time they spend in meetings and whether it's valuable or not. And one of the product managers stayed on and we were talking about sort of like, how was that for you? And he says, I looked at this and I realized this is part of the reason that I'm needing to go on more meds, and why I've gained 10 pounds, and why I'm having a really hard time quitting smoking.
Yep.
Because this is destroying my life. And the thing that was, it was painful to watch this guy, because you could see, once he could actually see it in black and white, he knew that was destroying his sense of well-being. And, you're going to lose that employee as a leader. The thing that tipped for him, and by the end of the program, he's bright and he's gained some time back, and that was all wonderful. And some of that was the work we did, but a lot of what made that possible was permission. So as a leadership group, by taking on the conversation, they gave him permission to delegate. They gave him permission to be more efficient. They gave him permission to say, hey, I need help. Hey, I need to opt out of this meeting because I have other things I need to do, right? And that bit of making it okay to ask for permission, and then turning around and building into those first 5 minutes, the check-ins, how are you, right?
Yep.
What do we need to clear? What do we need to do today to make this work? The last 5 minutes, hey, are these dates realistic? Can we actually do that? Those two things. You think that, I don't have time for those. If you don't have time for those, you don't have time to take care of your people, right? So those two things not only exposed all of these things that were eroding people's well-being and burning them out, but gave the team a chance to address them, and permission to make it possible. And it was huge deal.
My eyes are tearing up a bit, in the sense that, imagine the life for this leader and the people that work for that person, who actually now get delegation to them in an effective way, by the way, and they get to step into something they've been yearning to do. He gets to be a little bit, excuse me, he gets to be a lot better, right? And then everything can change, because listen, my burnout story, I was 100 pounds overweight. I was, hiding from meetings. I was doing them all virtually without a camera at the time. Meetings were killing me. That's true, right? All that's true. And I had the mental belief that I had to be the one doing it all, and I was a new mom. So compound that with anybody who has kids at home right now. Let me tell you something, right? Everybody's got something, right? And what happened for me was, I gave myself permission to reevaluate and reboot. And I just love closing on this note. So Ctrl+Alt+Delete, reboot your meeting ways, reboot your mental mindset and models around what's yours and what can be delegated. Get clear about, do you need to be on the camera or not? Right? Make those simple agreements with people now, and watch what can happen. And then, of course, get Elise's book, get that ROI calculator, and start thinking it. Listen to this podcast a couple of times, because there's so much in here, you guys. When you think about the legacy you want to leave, and this leader we're talking about right now, and myself included, it starts with you. And it starts with caring enough to look and think about doing it differently, doing it better, looking back at your, decision velocity and quality, your engagement and your sales. What we're talking about today can really be a game changer for you.
Yeah.
And Elise, I'm so grateful you're here. I'm grateful that you have this passion. I'm honored to know you and share this time together and tell our stories. And, I'm building a playlist. So this is my silly question at the end. But one of the things I know about raising your energy to be able to take on something new or look at something hard is raising your energy and your own personal vibration. So I ask everybody, what's a song that you listen to? What's your go-to song that helps you feel more light, feel more joyful, so that you can take on the hard stuff? What comes to mind for you?
3, depends on the day.
I love it.
Yeah. I like Sweet Home Alabama. I like that they say at the beginning, turn it up, because I'm all about that one.
Yeah.
Pharrell's Happy is a good one, especially if you got 9-year-olds. And then Missy Elliott's Get Your Freak On.
Get Your Freak On. Are you kidding? This is why I love you. Yes. Yeah, I would say let your freak flag fly, right?
I know, it's really frustrating because Amazon will only play this cleaned up version. I'm like, snatch your chick, and I'm like, what the what? You know. I guess, you know, child appropriate.
Well, we'll have a karaoke day one day too, my friend. So for all of you listening in, if you're feeling like, oh, this is too big, you get Elise in your head, go get Missy Elliott, go get Pharrell. I don't know who sings Sweet Home Alabama. I know every song word, but I have no idea who sings it.
It's awesome.
I know, right? I'll figure it out
anymore. Yeah,
I'll figure it out. So grab your song, find a little happy, move your body, drink your water, look up at the sky, recognize you're part of something much bigger. Know that you're called to do the work that you're doing. Know that we've got your back. There are tips and tricks all the time coming at you real time in this podcast. I hope you connect with Elise. So tell people how to connect with you, Elise. What's the best way to find you?
You can find us on our website. It's lucidmeetings.com.
Excellent. Lucidmeetings.com. Go get her ROI. Share this with a leader you love that you may not even have the courage to talk about, and just say, thought you might like this. You don't have to tell them what timestamp they need to listen into, right? And, you know, tune in for more. I can't wait to have Elise back again to talk about other things, all things meeting, but just another lens. And Elise, thank you for being here and sharing your gifts. I'm very grateful.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to when we meet in person.
Me too. All right, everybody, you take good care. We're rooting for you, and have a great day.
That was great content, but let's be honest. If you don't get the support you need and start making changes in your life and work as a leader in tech, you can expect regret and burnout in the near future. Lisa can help you get kick-ass results at work without burning out, so you can be present for the moments that matter to you and your loved ones. Take your first step at rebootwithlisa.com.